Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready now. Quick question. How many of you guys are hourly workers? Just raise your hand really quick. Alright. So that's probably most of us, including myself. I'm sorry. Okay. The minimum wage was put into effect back in 1938 by a law called the Fair Labor Act. The Fair Labor Act was passed, like I said, in 1938. It set a base rate for employees to be able to go off of when they enter the workforce. Looking at this from an economic standpoint, it's what we call as a price floor. A price floor is where we set the bar at the bottom for any product or service or whatever it may be. There are a few issues with price floors, one of them being that there's a few of them being that they are I had this memorized. One of them being that they produce less workers and because of the higher wages. So the biggest impact that minimum wage has on our economy is a few things. But the way I want to break it down is I want to take minimum wage versus the cost of living, and I want to also put it up against the businesses of our region. Setting aside political differences on this issue, just simply looking at the different aspects of minimum wage can help us to get a better understanding of the picture as a whole. Okay. So first thing what I want to get you guys to understand is that it is definitely a good thing to have minimum wage, don't get me wrong, but it's not really effective to have a drastic increase in the minimum wage because it has both an effect on the cost of living and on local businesses in the region. The first part of my topic is going to be about the cost of living. So back in March of 2016, our governor passed a law that would put a $15 minimum wage into effect starting January 2022, and in some counties it would be effective in 2021. This is good for, most of us. It would be good for me. I started at 15, but it would be not so good for the other part of the workforce where they're already at the middle tier, and all of a sudden things start to become more expensive. So back in 2017, California's electric prices shot up 89% higher than peer states. Number one being this is a really popular state. A lot of people do like to come here, but the cost of living includes electricity, gas, water, food, just everything we use, all the services and utilities that we don't usually take into effect. So when we have a wage increase, it costs more for labor for these certain companies to produce these certain things. So for example, if you went to the grocery store and you bought a box of cereal, a company from, say, Trader Joe's or Sprouts, they have a lot of local companies that do business in California. Those are manufacturers in this state. When they go to produce this certain type of cereal box, it's costing them for labor as much as it's costing them for product. So they're not just going to say, okay, well, the wage increased to $15. Now I have to pay people $15 to start, and then all of a sudden I'm going to get more sales. It doesn't work that way. So just because your cost goes higher doesn't necessarily mean your revenue increases. So the difference is going to be made in the cost or the price they're going to charge the consumer for that specific item. So instead of paying $4 for a box of cereal, you're going to pay $5 for that same box of cereal. So in essence, you're not really saving or gaining when you get a minimum wage increase. And it just doesn't go to show you for products. It also goes as well as rent. In 2016 and 2017, there was a huge spike in rent increases of 1%. 1% it doesn't sound so drastic, but when you have a 1 to 4% increase in rent, by the way, these are statistics from the California Housing Market Board. I forgot their exact name, but something like that. The rent increased from 2.5% to 4% between 2016 of March and July of 2016. That same year, if you were shopping for an apartment, you would have noticed rent shot up from Orange County from about $1,400 to our average right now is about $1,750 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So people don't really take into consideration that yes, you do make the $3 or $4 more, and trust me, I would want it too. But it takes an effect on a different part of your living situation in this state. The other part that I want to talk about was the small businesses. So small businesses actually make up 49% of the workforce for this state. 49% of the 13.8 million people working in the state of California work for a small business. Small business meaning an entity with 500 or less employees. Those are statistics from the Small Business Administration of California. Those small businesses are not Walmart, Target, bigger retailers that can afford to have a $15 minimum wage increase to pay their employees that amount. And I had quotes, but I couldn't find them, from multiple local small businesses that claim that it's not about not paying their employees more, because when small businesses, they build a relationship with their employees, so giving them more money is not the issue. The issue is, at the end of the day, is there going to be a profit or a loss? And for small businesses, an increase, once one business had reported they would have a $100,000 deficit and have to move operations to Nevada, simply because if the minimum wage increased to $15, they would not be able to have any profit margin for their products. So yes, raising the minimum wage to $15 is going to make a little bump in the paycheck, but in reality it doesn't make up the difference in the cost of living. Now, that doesn't go to say that the cost of living doesn't have its own inflation. So everything has an inflation rate. Everything, cars, everything gets more expensive over time. And not necessarily more expensive, but just looks like a bigger price. So like a house back in the 20s, what, $30,000, $20,000, $40,000. Now it's $400,000 or $500,000. Just regular inflation. But increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour is a drastic increase that would surcharge that inflation rate and possibly hurt us in the long run. What I just want you guys to take away from this is, when next time we go to vote for a minimum wage increase, just try to look at both sides of this. So, do you really gain or lose?
It is.
Isn't it 18 minutes?
I still had.
You still had a minute and a half you could have used. You want to go back up and use another minute and a half?
No, I'm okay. I didn't know I did. No, you didn't.
Well, let's see see what Danny thought. She was the one who was evaluating you. He says he did horribly. Is that what you thought, Danny?
I don't think he did horribly. I mean, it takes a lot of bravery, I think, to go first, especially when we kind of do something a little more serious than impromptu speech. But, so good job. But, so I think maybe you could have had a stronger start with, rather than starting with the rhetorical question, maybe you could have stated it as more of an assumption based off that we're all college students and in school, that a lot of us probably won't be making any salary jobs. So you seemed a little nervous at first and you had some pauses, but then I think after you got going, you started gaining momentum and confidence, which was a lot easier to listen to. I wasn't sure if I heard a preview. I thought I did. Was it the 2 points? There were two. Okay, then yeah, good job on having a preview. Maybe making it a little more clear. Maybe I was having a hard time paying attention. I would like maybe to hear where your sources are coming from before you start stating the information, because then I'm not sure where you're getting your information from. So hearing it first would probably be good. And then also maybe with some pauses. This is something that I try to work on myself, is just maybe staying. Having quiet pauses instead of filling it with a little bit of nervous chatter, because I think that kind of makes us more nervous, and then we're like, oh, what am I gonna say? And then for us, it might just be more of an intentional pause on your part rather than a nervousness. Let's see. Yeah, other than that, I liked the way that you ended. I thought you finished strong, so good job.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I understand what she means by the attention device. The audience survey thing's always a little bit problematic. I did like the historical reference, though, about when we actually had the first minimum wage and the idea that we're creating a price floor here. I thought that was okay as well. I think your preview does need to be a little bit more direct and clear. One of the things that I think you hesitate to do is to take a position. And in fact, at the end of the speech, you come back to this and you just finish with a question. You're telling us at the end to ask ourselves this question: is this a good idea? You just spent almost 8 minutes telling us it's not a good idea. Why are you afraid to saying that? I don't understand why you wouldn't finish with that particular point of view. Most of your argument does in fact suggest that the current increases in the minimum wage that California has voted in are going to have problems for us. And you've shown us the kinds of problems it's going to have. It's going to cause some businesses to maybe have to leave or stop. It's going to cause the cost of living to go up when it comes to prices that we pay for products, and that's going to cause the cost of housing to go up also. That I didn't see how the cost of housing issue was as clearly related to the minimum wage as the other things were. That seemed to, I'm sure there's a link, but it's not explained very clearly in your presentation. I agree with Danny's assessment of your presentation. At the start, you are very kind of hyper-conscious and a little bit nervous. But once you got going, you were fine. You do a good job speaking to the audience, and your voice is energetic and, like I said, forceful for the most part. And you look mostly engaged while you're talking to us. Those hesitations probably ought to be the silent kind of thing, like she mentioned, the little pauses that you have instead of interjecting some comment or a sigh or a well or one of those vocalized pauses. It's probably just best to take in a deep breath and then get on to the next point. It was a little unclear. You had this whole discussion about the electrical cost going up, and that was not clear how that was affected by the minimum wage, but other prices going up, I did think that you did a pretty good job on that. She's talking, when she mentions the issue of citations, you usually do provide a post-citation source, but it's better usually to give the citation prior to the information so that we know where your explanation or argument starts and where the evidence is, as opposed to afterwards I have to go back and go, well, wait a second, which part of that was the evidence and which part was your argument? It's a little bit harder to distinguish if you have the post-citation presentation. So doing it the other way is a good idea. All right, thank you.